Welcome to all C3RF members and friends throughout the nation, indeed around the world, as we embark on yet another in-hot interview session with those on the frontier of the fight for the restoration of Canadian charter rights and freedoms. Our C3RF in-hot session today should be of great interest to all as it delves into the same rights in the face of the wildfire lockdowns that are springing up across the maritime provinces. We are very fortunate to have with us today the now famous Master Warrant Officer Jeff Evely, retired, who has dared challenge the Nova Scotia hiking ban and is now in receipt of a $28,000 fine as a result. Before we get into that and its implications for all Canadians, though, we need to note that Jeff is a retired veteran of the Canadian Armed Forces, born and raised in Cox Heath, Nova Scotia. He enlisted in 2001 as an electronic communications specialist and dedicated 20 years to serving his country. During his military career, Jeff deployed to Afghanistan in 2009, Iraq 2019, served with NORAD 2010 to 2014, defending North American airspace, and completed the 100th annual four-day marches in Nijmegen, Netherlands in 2016. First off, Jeff, first question. I note that you joined the military in 2001, and I'm just wondering what made you decide to join the military in the first place and basically sign that contract of unlimited liability in serving Canada in that fashion?
Well, I joined in January of 2001. So first off, it was unrelated to 9/11. It was
Okay.
pre-9/11. I did my electronics program at a civilian college, and I was out doing the job hunt. I literally just happened to be driving by the recruiting center, and I thought to myself, I did cadets, I did, my junior leadership course in the summer and stuff like that. Seemed like I really took to it naturally and everything, and I thought I should go in and have a listen to what these guys have to say. And they were, licking their chops at me as soon as I got in the door with my civilian qualifications. And so they put a bunch of trades in front of me, said, you'd be great for any of these. At that time, prior to 2001, the thinking was still pretty Cold War era. So I was thinking in terms of NORAD, actually. I was like, because I wanted to be where the action was. And I was like, well, where is the action right now? And it seems like it's probably NORAD. So I chose an Air Force electronics specialist trade, with that in mind. And then when I got to my first posting, so I would have had about 8 months in when 9/11 hit. So I was free and clear of basic training, and most of the electronics training in the military had been written off because of my civilian qualifications. So I ended up at my first posting like fairly early in my career. And everybody remembers where they were when 9/11 hit. And I was on a course, and it was like a basic military skills course. They sent it on me for some reason, even though I just did basic training. But apparently, there was this revitalization required in the military at that time, and nobody had any skills. So they had to do like a 2-week-long course for refresher. I think it was called ARAF at the time, the Auxiliary Air Force something. But they were reservists, retired guys from combat arms trades, just to give everybody the refresher on basic military skills. So we were doing that, and the guy came in and said, folks, we're not sure what happened, whether it was an accident or a terrorist attack, but a jet airliner just hit one of the World Trade Center towers. And we were all kind of looking at each other like, oh, what are these guys up to?
Really? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're messing with us, right? And then he came in like a little while later and said the second tower was just hit with another jet airliner. This looks like it was a terrorist attack. And we still thought that they were pulling our legs until we went on break and saw the TV in the break room. And there were the Twin Towers smoldering. And I can remember even thinking in that moment, like, this is going to be my generation's effort. This is what my career is going to be all about now. And as it turned out, it was by and large countering the jihadi threat.
Yeah, I see. I remember, like you say, you remember what you were doing on that day. I was flying a DC-9 from Quebec City to Toronto International, and we were airborne at the time. And 100 miles out of Toronto, we got cleared to land. Well, what the heck's going on here? You never get cleared to land in Toronto until you're on top of the runway because it's so busy. Yeah. But we got cleared to land, and 100 miles out, we landed, and the airport was just wall to wall with iron because everybody was coming in to park someplace. And like you, we went into the ready room, and there it was on TV. The Twin Towers were just about to, well, were collapsing, as a matter of fact. And the world
Yeah.
changed. The world changed for us. Now I see that you were in some pretty tough spots there in the military in Afghanistan during time periods when Canada was taking a severe hit, a lot of casualties, a lot of fatalities.
Yeah.
Your impressions of that experience in Afghanistan?
Well, first of all, I always like to qualify that I'm not a combat vet because it's important to make that distinction. So I didn't engage in combat directly myself. I was providing tech support to the unmanned air vehicle detachment. We flew a lot of night missions, so we actually watched like a lot of the action every night, every single night. We were watching something, and it was really interesting, as I'm sure you can appreciate, to be behind the scenes and watching the way the media was reporting on things. Always very different when you're involved. I'm sure anybody who's ever had the experience in being involved in something that was on the news understands that, the way that they report it is not the way that it really happens. So that was eye-opening for me. And I kind of took it like my purposes there. I had a secondary mission that was a little bit more anthropological in nature, because I was kind of a big Orwell guy, when I was in high school and stuff like that. I liked
Oh,
Orwell and Huxley and Hemingway and
mm,
F. Scott Fitzgerald and well, three out of those four guys were World War I veterans, and so I always kind of wondered how it is that they gained these deep insights into the human condition that I didn't fully understand. But part of, like I say, the secondary mission of my military service was because I wanted to understand what they understood. So I kind of took that approach to it as well. And it was very interesting, I will say. Especially, I think the first lesson that I learned, I often talk about this, but the first lesson that I learned in Afghanistan was that humor is a coping strategy for human beings. Because the minute I stepped off the plane, there was this really dark humor that was flying around. You wouldn't believe the things that come out of soldiers' mouths in a war zone. And it's everybody. I don't care. Like, you could be the most snowflake, leftist or whatever. You could be the most politically correct person in the world, and you would still see those people, saying some of the most awful things that you would ever want to hear with a smile
yeah.
on their face. Um, and so I was kind of like, what is going on here? This is very bizarre. But I kind of caught on. It's like it's a joke. Everybody is just kind of ridiculing their circumstances and having a little bit of fun with it.
Mm,
And that's important. I started to understand that that's important. Important. Like, we got to have fun at work. Everybody's got to have fun at work. And when you're a soldier, like, the work can get pretty dark, and the humor adjusts accordingly.
yeah.
So that was people acclimating to their circumstances. And what I found was that, it was almost like nothing bothered me. No matter what happened, like, we were getting rocket attacks pretty much on the daily. There were plenty of times when we had to go into the bunkers and get all bombed up, and there were vehicle-borne IED attacks, at the gate and stuff like this.
Yeah.
I never really had anything like a close call myself, but there's all that stuff going on all around you all the time. And it's basically like the weather. I mean, I come out the tent in the morning like, oh, it's rockety out today. Look at that. Um, so, and
That's
that was,
incredible because, well, I guess when you find yourself in a situation like that, like from my own experience, your whole worldview can kind of shifts. I mean, you find yourself in a place that's very unfamiliar. And
yeah,
I remember, just as an aside, from my own instance, I was in the Persian Gulf, and I was flying. I was taking a foreplane up through Saudi Arabia to go to a combat air patrol, and this was about a couple of days before the big offensive push in 1991. And as I was on my way up the Saudi Arabia, I was flying over this road, and I looked down, and all you could see for just miles and miles and miles was dust being kicked up by tons and tons of heavy armor,
yeah,
tanks and APCs. Everything was rolling north to
yeah,
position for the sweep around to encircle the Iraqis. And I remember looking down and thinking to myself, I'm just in a big bloody machine. I'm just part of a big bloody machine. I'm a very small cog. And this was a worldview that was totally foreign to me. But to find yourself in a machine that kind of in many ways out of control. So what do you do in a situation like that other than, say it's rocketing this morning, that kind of humor. You can see it start to play out.
Right.
But you also
There is
mentioned,
no control either. There's no
yeah,
controlling it.
no
That's
control.
that's part of what you get to understand is we can't really control anything. All we can
No.
do is mitigate.
I found that all you could do basically was protect your buddy's ass. Like if I
Yeah.
had a floor plane, the best I could do was try to keep them out of away from any enemy fire or warn them about enemy fire, or try to take care of them, and that's about as far as it went. But you mentioned very interesting. You mentioned the media and their perception. Uh, how did you find that? What were the differences between what you saw and what the media was reporting? What was the difference there?
Um, well, I think it was just kind of like the overall. It's very curated when you see it in the media. And like I said, like I saw everything, right? Because we had the video feed, we had the bird's eye view, we provided Overwatch for the guys, we provided Overwatch for the soft guys while they were outdoor kicking. Sometimes we would just kind of fly over the troops while they were sleeping at night to see if anybody was sneaking up on them. Other times we found
Just by way
IEDs.
of explanation, Jeff, I have to mention that when you talk about flyover troops, you were involved with the remotely controlled drone parcel that was over there. Okay, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. It was called the Heron. It's a pretty massive drone,
yeah.
um, and carried a pretty sophisticated payload for its day. Absolutely.
Hmm.
We had like the super zoom camera. We had the synthetic aperture radar that was very useful for finding IEDs. It's kind of like
Wow.
the mass grave hoax and Kamloops, like the
Yeah,
ground penetrating radar. Well, it's a
yeah.
synthetic aperture radar, and all it does is it shows soil disruptions. So you'll be able to see that it's like a different color orange. It's basically like video, but it looks orange,
Wow.
and it's a brighter orange where the soil has been disrupted. So you could actually see a long, thin line on the ground where the command wire was, because what we had done is we were using electronic countermeasures to counter the IED threat that they were activating with cell phones, and so then they switched to command wires. But then when we showed up, we found all their command wires, and you could just follow it right back to the guy, the trigger man in the bush, and drop a bomb on him.
Wow.
So
Okay.
yeah, yeah, we did a lot. We didn't because we're a kinder, gentler military in Canada. We didn't actually have a weapons payload on our birds, so we would have to call the Americans to come in
Kind
and drop a bomb on them. But
Kinder,
um,
gentler, yeah. Okay.
yeah,
Now that you talk about the media being more curated, let's take that a step further in your timeline, and let's talk about Freedom Convoy 2022. And I bring forward the media because I remember in that time frame, guys like yourself, veterans who are out there, having your say about mandated vaccines, were being called things like Russian agents. You were paid by Russia to take down the government of Canada. What did you feel about that media coverage that you were seeing at that point in time?
I was expecting all of that on my way to Ottawa. This kind of media malfeasance is something that I've been tracking for years. I
Okay.
haven't had cable, I haven't watched TV in 15 years because it's trash. And now, when I was in Afghanistan, I found it to be curated in the sense that it's absolute chaos. Like war is chaos. You need to embrace the chaos, embrace the suck if you're going to last. Otherwise, you'll burn out. But when it's presented in the media, it's always presented as this orderly, well-oiled machine, and it is anything but.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, whatever we manage to accomplish, whatever success we have, it's like miraculous. It's like, wow, I can't believe we pulled that off because it was a complete mess trying to get us here. And organized chaos, that's the expression in the military, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But now, like the media has really kind of continued to degrade the integrity of the media since that time. And I was already kind of attuned to it from my experience, so I could watch it real time. It's like, holy smokes, they're lying more than ever now. And I remember I got off social media while I was in the military, like in 20, well, it would have been 2020, January 6th, 2020, because I watched all that go down, and I saw all of the live cell phone footage. So I knew it was not an insurrection, and I knew that there were plants there. There were bad actors there, like whether we're talking about federal plants or bad actor Antifa types. So there was all that stuff going on, and they were hyping those actors within the crowd to, sort of blanket smear everybody who showed up that day. And they were rounding them up and throwing them in jail. And then we had a unanimous vote in the House of Commons to declare the Proud Boys a terrorist organization, having
Yeah,
committed no terrorist act, and they're not even a terrorist organization in the United States.
yeah.
And so I knew I was like, because Canada is much further left than the United States. But I knew I was like, okay, like I have supportive statements of Donald Trump all over my social media. I never crossed the line into, I was the ethics guy, so I knew what I could say and what I couldn't. And I'm a political junkie, so I would stick to American politics on social media because I can do that while in uniform. But you can't
Mm.
comment on Canadian political matters and matters before the Canadian government or military matters, but there's no prohibition against talking about American politics. So I had a lot of supportive statements for Donald Trump on my social media, and just seeing the Canadian government's reaction, I was like, okay, I am trapped in this institution, and they are going to hunt me down through my social media. So
Yeah.
so I got off that, and when I got to Ottawa and I saw the news coverage, I said, this is the same goddamn op that they ran in on January 6th. They're trying to January 6th us, and I went around telling everybody that, like, if you're not ready to be arrested, then you should leave now because we are getting arrested. It's the same op that they ran on January 6th. And the trouble that they had with the convoy is that it was spontaneous, whereas for January 6th they had a date ahead of time so they could plan.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they got caught flat-footed, and they were scrambling to bring this in. It took them long enough, but yeah, I was already settled on the idea on my way to Ottawa that I was going there to get arrested.
Very, very prescient. That's very, very smart. And it was set up like a January 6th. This is Canada's insurrection. This is Canada's attack on the Capitol building. This is people trying to take down the government. And wow, I that whole thing it just screams bias in the press to actually tag along with that narrative and actually pump it up and explode it the way they did. Now yourself, they did track you down, didn't they? Then and you were arrested in 2022.
Yeah, so I didn't get arrested while we were holding the line. There were a whole bunch of us down there, and I was right on Chris Deering's shoulder when he got taken down and got the boots put to him right in front of me.
Okay. Well,
I was yelling at them too. Like, there is so much that happened in the lead up to that event that never made any news and got absolutely purged from social media and the internet. Chris gave amazing speeches talking about his harrowing experience, having been the sole survivor of an IED attack on his LAV. And he got really messed up. I mean, his physical injuries were incredible. I stood there listening to him list his injuries and like the surgeries that he had to have and his whole recovery process for those cops. And then they went and did that to him, as
well,
greasy as they did, right in front of me, which I believe, I think they were trying to provoke us. I think that they were trying to start a riot.
yeah,
Um, and
yeah,
I had lots to say to them as well. I basically just went up one side and down the other. I wasn't like swearing or calling them names other than thugs. But it was, it was from a professional standpoint, and I was talking to them about honor and discipline and these kinds of things. And I had a few of them crying, so I feel like I achieved my goals there. I didn't believe that they were going to back off. Like, they had their orders, they knew what they were doing when they came in there. I mean, it was going to happen regardless, but I just wanted to make sure that they didn't get to feel like the good guys for doing it.
yeah.
So I think I succeeded there. And after Chris went down, I went back to the monument with the other guys, did a bit of a regroup, and I was running the shift schedule for the sentry duty that we took on after we took down the monument. What's the mayor's name there? John? No, sorry, I can't remember his name.
Oh,
Uh,
that's
the mayor of Ottawa.
Watson. Watson.
Jim Watson, yeah.
Mayor Watson,
Yeah.
yeah.
So Jim Watson put that fence up around the monument in an effort to smear political dissidents.
Why
To
did you feel that you had to guard the monument itself? What was the motivating factor there?
I mean, I don't think that we felt there was any need for it. It was a bunch of
Yeah.
hype. It was a smear tactic that Jim Watson was, he was using the body of the unknown soldier as a political prop to smear people with whom he disagreed. But the police on the front line were like, how are we supposed to keep patriots from peeing on this monument if you guys take this fence down? And we said, okay, look, and I believe it was Brian Marr. I have Brian Marr on video, captain retired, and he said, "Look, how about if we put a man on this monument 24/7?" And they were like, "You guys are going to guard this monument." And we're like, "Hell yeah, we will."
Yeah.
That's what we ended up doing. We did the sentry duty, and on the 19th of February, which is the day after Chris went down, I was on my way to the monument for my 4 a.m. shift duty because I was running the schedule, so I always got the 4 a.m. shift. When I was on my way, I went down Sussex towards Wellington. I was turning right on Wellington to head toward the monument, and there was a cop car at the end of Sussex, and the female officer in the passenger seat told me she's like, you can't go up there. And I showed her my medals, and I said, I have a sentry duty at the monument. We have an agreement with you guys. Check with your liaison officer, like it's all above board. And she was like, no, you can't go up there. And I said, oh yeah, I can. And I just kept walking. And she said,
Okay.
stop. And I said no, and then I ran. And when a couple other cops kind of came toward me, as soon as they got within arm's distance of me, I just put my hands up and went down to the ground. They said that they tackled me. These three cops in court all told a different fish story about how one guy said he body slammed me. I was like,
Wow.
you guys are ridiculous. It's a sad state of affairs in Canada's police forces these days.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I can't say it's ridiculous on the face of it because for anybody tells me that veterans are out there, especially combat veterans are out there peeing on the National War Monument, I'm thinking you're a bloody liar. You're
Yeah.
just a bloody liar, and I just can't see how that story would even gain any legs. It's just so counterintuitive. It's just kind of dumb.
Well, it
But
just goes to show you how propagandistic our press has become. Like
oh,
they're
God,
taking money from the government now, and their whole function, the press in a free society, is to hold the government to account on behalf of the people. But because
yes.
they're on the payroll, now they hold the people to account on behalf of the government.
But now, making these kind of stories up, basically what we're seeing here is the press is become a kind of the enemy of the people. It's like
Oh yeah.
Trump. Trump calls it fake news. Trump says the press in the states is the enemy of the people. And then when they start coming up with stories like this, you know, you can't help but think there's some gravitas behind that statement and that observation.
Yeah.
But okay, what happened then? Did you get arrested at that point?
Yeah. So,
Oh,
like I said, I was running. Now, she ordered me not to go in there, and she ordered me to stop. And I assessed those orders as unlawful, and I have a duty to defy unlawful orders. So I said no, and I ran. I gave a sprint for about half a block, and then I saw the other officers there, and I was like, okay, like we're not going to fight it out here or anything. Like I'm just going to go down
yeah.
peacefully, teach them how to properly cuff me because they almost broke my arm trying to bend it the wrong way. And
Mm.
we had some words while they were putting me into the car. I let them know how I felt about things. Again, it was more about principle, professionalism, all this stuff. But I'm loud and I'm pretty animated. Anyway, they put me in the car. And I went to the downtown facility, the lockup there. They told me to sign an undertaking and they would let me go. It said I couldn't return to the red zone, the downtown core. And I was like, no, I'm going back. You can shove it. And then they ended up transporting me to the Innis Road facility because I wouldn't sign. But then, like while I was there, it really kind of became clear that the whole protest had been crushed and there was nothing to get back to. So I ended up signing the conditions to get out because I can do a lot more good on the out than I can on the in.
Mhm.
So I went on my way and just waited for my court date. But then Neil Sheard called Rolling Thunder to, have a wreath laying ceremony and a parade to give dignity back to the monument and the veterans like Chris who were beaten and the others who were drug off the monument. And I was like, well, I'm not going to miss that. So I headed for Ottawa again. I called my lawyer and told her to expect a call. And I was the sergeant major on that parade, and I gave a speech at the monument. So the cops didn't have any trouble finding me, and they came out and rearrested me.
Oh,
Um,
okay. Okay.
they're
Oh,
still
it's
holding $5,000
okay.
bail.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, you've got you have a strong sense of uh, uh, your own individual rights and freedoms there. Just to think that you would dare to be loud in Canada.
Oh, I know.
Well, no wonder you got taken to task, you
Yeah,
loud person, you.
yeah.
And
Um,
you continue to be loud, and now we find yourself making international headlines. And I love this story. I just love it.
well,
International headlines pushing back against the hiking ban, initially in Nova Scotia, and now in New Brunswick, and now Newfoundland is coming up with $150,000 fines or something like that. I think they're really going for the gold. But you find yourself in the middle of what looks like it's going to be a climate change lockdown. Am I wrong in assessing that?
I think it is in a sense. Lately, they've kind of been steering away from the climate language a little bit, but
Mm,
whether this is part of a broader agenda, I mean, it is and it isn't. It's more like I think I always say it's more like an info op. And so I think these idiots really believe the climate change narrative. And, we're in a state of global boiling right now. So,
yeah. Oh, yeah.
everybody's, we got to do 2 months to flatten the climate and then everything will be all better. But they're idiots, useful ones at that. I mean, you can just, I think the first video I did, everybody's been telling me anyway, it really demonstrates the absurdity of these measures. And
Is
that
that the
is,
video? Is that the video where you say this is the woods and this is not the woods?
yeah,
Yeah, I love that.
thanks. I didn't think it was really going to take off. I mean, that one wasn't quite technically viral, but it's like 850,000 views. So that's like Canadian mega viral.
Yeah.
I didn't expect that at all. I was just blowing off steam because I was super pissed that they brought these measures in again after they did it in 2023. I took them to court that time. I submitted a judicial review on charter grounds. Ultimately, the judge declined to grant standing because he
Yes.
said I hadn't actually been harmed because there was no money involved and I couldn't stand on my rights alone. So he said, had I gotten fined, then I would have had standing. So they brought the measures back in this year, and I was just like super pissed because I was like, now I got to go get fined. I can't believe these guys are doing this again. So when I got to the park on the first day that they had those the yellow tape up on this is the woods. Um, I was just like really aggravated actually, and I needed to blow off some steam. So I went around mocking it because that's how you beat tyrants. It's with mockery. They can't take it. They're
No, they
insecure.
can't.
Ultimately.
I,
No.
I think that's got to be the most effective weapon because they just can't they're so full of hubris. They're
Yeah.
so full of their own compassion and righteousness that they cannot be mocked. I mean, how could you mock me? And
Yeah.
mocking them just drives me nuts. Yeah.
And
Good job.
how dare you lower caste human, right? How dare you
Yes,
mock me? I am.
exactly. Yeah, we're
Yeah.
talking about the stratification of society here. You've
Yeah.
got your people who know better, and
Hmm.
you got your other people who should know better.
Hmm.
And the people that know better are going to teach the people who should know better how to know better.
Oh, yeah, and they will teach you a lesson.
Oh,
Um,
ruthless.
yeah, they are ruthless. They're absolutely ruthless. Look at this. I got a $2,800,872.50 fine
Yes.
for 90 seconds of
Yes.
walking in the woods.
And
But
talk about ruthless. What about well, now we get into ruthlessness to the point where rule of law breaks down because now
yeah,
you have situations where people like Tamara Leach a Métis grandmother, and Chris Barber,
Mhm.
hardworking blue collar truck driver, are
Yeah.
facing 7, 8 years in prison for mischief. And we
Yeah.
got other folks running around downtown Ottawa. Talk about your experience in downtown Ottawa. They're throwing firebombs, smoke bombs. They're shooting up schools, synagogues. No problem.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
This is not the rule of law. This is not rule of law.
No, I think it's reminiscent of a concept that was first advanced by Marxist professor Herbert Marcuse in the
Ah,
60s called liberating tolerance. We call it repressive tolerance over here on the right wing because that's what it is. It's repression for anything perceived as right wing and carte blanche for the left. And I think that that kind of thinking is behind a lot of the catch and release stuff. And really, like it's like the whole moral paradigm is inverted, where good is evil and evil is good. And
yes.
in the West here, in Western countries like Canada, the United States, and Britain, we're the good guys. But the current narrative is that we are the bad guys starting all the wars. When really it's completely the opposite. It's the other way around. It's like we're under constant attack from everybody else. And when we retaliate, that's where the narrative starts. I've been hip to this for a number of years. Even going with the narrative around the Crusades these days, like the initial Crusades of 1095 AD,
Yeah.
those were counteroffensive after centuries of Muslim aggression against Christians and Jews, particularly like it was to liberate the Holy Land. Jerusalem was sacked by the Muslims.
Just
Um,
for my own interest's sake, when did you start to get to start to read up on things like the Crusades? Was that part of your military experience, or was that beforehand, before you joined the military? When did that
no,
interest get piqued?
I'm just kind of geeky like that.
Okay.
If my curiosity is piqued about something, and usually my curiosity is piqued with something online, and then I kind of go like most of what's online is garbage, so I'll read some books about it, and develop a more fulsome understanding of the issue. And I just have a pretty verbose, not verbose, but I have a pretty large, collection of books, and I've probably lost half of them. So.
Yeah.
I'm
I
just
just
an
I
avid
just
reader.
asked for my own experience. Like when I was flying for an airline and 9/11 happened. That was very close to home. That was because I was airborne at the same time, and there was a lot of stuff going on on that particular day. So I thought to myself, what the heck is going on here? So I decided, well, from my military days, I knew that the first thing you got to do if you're going to go into a battle or a war is to know your enemy. You've got to study him. You got to know what
Yes.
his ideology is. You got to know where he's coming from. You got to know
Uh-huh.
what motivates him. And I did that. I started delving into topics like jihad. No, jihad is not a personal struggle to salvation. No, jihad is holy war, and that's the way it's written up in Islam. All the
Yeah.
things. So I went fairly deep into that stuff, and so now I see these narratives that are coming out about today about jihad, Sharia law. It's all poppycock. It's all.
Absolutely.
It's just there's nothing to it. It's just, and now you have
No.
to start thinking about well, is this deliberate? Are
Yeah.
these deliberate stories deliberately told to weaken and bring down an enemy? And I
Yes.
see you talk
Yes.
about things like I've seen you talk about unrestricted warfare and the Maoist
Yeah.
playbook, and there were two colonels in China, late
Yeah.
'90s. They wrote
Dell Lang and Meng Shangsu.
yeah, they wrote
Yeah.
a book on unrestricted warfare. And if you look at it and you look at what's playing out today,
Hmm.
there's an awful lot of coincidences going on there. So
Oh,
that is extremely interesting that, I don't know,
um,
we find
and,
ourselves
and
on
it's
either side of this screen here.
and I think extremely relevant as well, because the kind of tactics that they describe in there, like they're anything but kinetic. They will mention some kinetic tactics here and there, but overwhelmingly, I mean, they reference Sun Tzu's Art of War multiple times all throughout the book. Sun Tzu said that the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without any fighting. So the overwhelming majority of the tactics that are described within unrestricted warfare are things like economic warfare, cyber warfare, lawfare, cultural warfare, weaponized migration. Co-opting supranational organizations, like this idea of elite capture, where you get the elites of a country running things, working for the Chinese. That goes all the way back to Sun Tzu's Art of War,
Yeah.
especially Chapter 13, the use of spies. Chapter 3, attack by stratagem, which is a plan to deceive the enemy. So they reference this, and this is the kind of thinking that's been there going back to time immemorial. I don't think we've ever faced an enemy like this before. And
No.
on that note of elite capture and institutional capture,
Yeah.
um, they talk about supranational organizations, and according to them, the biggest of them all is the UN. And when you look at the UN now, you can see that like they have audit boards for every little committee that they do, and those boards are 60 to 80% Chinese. There
Yes.
are 90 million members of the Chinese Communist Party, and these are the kinds of audit boards that insist that the IPCC, the International Panel on Climate Change, adopt a model that assumes a constant level of solar irradiation, when we know that the level of solar irradiation is variable. And there are something like 26 other models from which they could choose that
Yeah.
incorporate a variable solar irradiation, that can and often do predict the actual changes to climate that we observe. The only way that they're able to make any hay out of this carbon nonsense is if they fudge their numbers by assuming a constant solar irradiation, because and carbon actually leads temperature, or sorry, temperature actually leads carbon. Carbon doesn't lead temperature. So the
By
sun heats
800 years, 800 years, I've read it's an 800-year lag
yeah.
between rising temperatures and CO2. Now,
So the
apparently,
CO
because the increasing temperatures force gases out of the oceans, and one of those gases is CO2,
exactly.
and on and on and on. But if you have a different theory, if you use a different model that actually works, you're going to get pilloried by the press, both domestic and international. I think there's
Well,
a Nobel Prize winner, physicist, I believe. I forget his name off the top of the head, but he argues against the prevailing narrative on climate change, and
uh-huh.
you can't see him. He's not anywhere, on social media or in the research papers or anywhere. He's that those narratives just don't get out there. That
Yeah.
leaves Canadians in kind of a funky place because information is king, knowledge is king, and if Canadians aren't getting the information, then we end up with situations going back to your hiking fine. We end up with a lot of Canadians saying, "You're the problem. It's Jeff who's the problem. He's being selfish. He's
Yeah.
he's not considering the public good." And when you see this, and there's a lot of that out there, what do you think?
I think that every atrocity and genocide in the history of the world was committed in the name of the greater good. I think that's
Yeah.
probably one of the most evil things that anybody can say is, you do this for the greater good. I think everybody needs to use their own judgment. And, some of the easiest lessons to take from history are that human beings are rather prone to groupthink, especially when the herd feels threatened and we seek external enemies. That we have a nasty penchant for scapegoating, always, internalizing our successes and externalizing our failures. Like all of this stuff really goes deep into human nature. And that was what I loved about, Orwell and Hemingway and S.
Yes.
Scott Fitzgerald and Aldous Huxley so much. It was just like they're really onto something here. I'm sort of grasping at as a young man to understand it, but and part, like I said, like a secondary objective for me was just to understand what it was that they were talking about. And one of these days when I have some time, then I'm going to write a creepy book, and maybe I could improve
I
on
think you
Eric's
could, Jeff.
skills.
I think it would be a spellbinder, I'm sure. But like you say, it is a very, very scary thing. Like I never thought, I always thought Canadians that we're not going to be fooled. We wouldn't do anything like the Germans in Nazi Germany. We're not that kind of people. But it's just so easy to mass hypnotize a whole society, and we're
Yeah.
seeing it play out in front of our eyes. And I think
Yeah.
I've seen numbers break down. It's like 12%. I've seen 12%. 12% of the population just has a hard time, hoisting on board these narratives that just don't make sense, and they'll actually say, no, I'm not going to get vaccinated. I'm not going to do it.
Right.
And then when you look at the numbers in Canada, well, it was about 12%, 10% that didn't take the vaccine, and so this number seems to hold out. But my goodness, that is just such a small number that compared to the other 80 or 85% that are out there, chugging down the Kool-Aid. It's
Oh
scary.
yeah. And they say it's like the 10th man out. That's what I always tried to be, was sort of the 10th man out, because I saw that all throughout my career. It's like when everybody, I used to say, we'd go to a meeting and everything would go so smoothly, and I'd be like, well, there's no point in calling a meeting if we're all just going to sit here and agree about everything. So here's a grenade. Have you guys thought about this? Like, and
Yeah.
it's upsetting to people, but it's a very important exercise, because I think that's when we get into dangerous territory. It's like when everybody agrees, that's a sign that we're engaging in groupthink, and we should test our ideas constantly against reality, and consider all the what ifs. Look at it cynically. I advocate for cynicism.
I'd
Um,
like to think that military background training kind of helps a person out with that regard, because let's face it, when we're in the military and we're talking about planning, we're taught to ask the question, what if?
yeah,
Okay, so you got a solution, and then someone comes in, the 10th man like yourself comes in and says, well, what if? What if
yeah,
this happens? And then you keep asking what if until there's no more what ifs, and then you're ready to go. But
yeah.
that I'm just looking at today's military, and I still have contacts in the military, and I'm getting feedback from guys that it seems to me like that whole what if regimen is kind of lost. I mean, it's everyone's accepting the narrative of the day. Everybody, I don't know, guys are actually going into struggle sessions like they had in Mao's time in the late '60s there, and they're talking about apologizing for being white. I'm sorry, I'm white. I'm privileged, and I thought, you got to be kidding me. Like nobody I knew in the military go along with that crap. But then again, they probably would have fired us for disagreeing, I guess. But I don't know.
Yeah, well, that's pretty much what happened with me. I uh,
Yes. Well, that's
I
what
was
happened to
the
me.
I was
You know.
the sergeant major at my last unit in Ottawa, and they brought in. Now, see, you remember, the Canadian media was desperate for their George Floyd, so they hyped this arrest using a vehicle in the Northern Territory of an Indigenous man. And because the officer was white, then clearly that guy was being arrested for racism. And they brought Brenda Lucky out in front of the press, and she was like, "I'm not sure what you guys are talking about. I don't really know any racists in the RCMP." But
Oh,
that wasn't good enough, and they
she
brought
got
her back.
creamed. Yeah, she got
Yeah.
creamed.
Yeah, she got crucified, and then she came back and she was like, "Oh, yeah, actually we are really racist because we have a physical fitness test and it has a long jump, and because women can't jump as far as men, we're racist." And then they turned around and said, "Okay, you too, military. You guys are racist too." And we
Yeah,
didn't even do anything, but we ended up having to do this training. Geez, I lost track of how many different soft skills courses they were inflicting on us. But we had to do this training, the anti-racism training. And they did the train the trainer stuff. I hate that, where it's like a cascade, the higher headquarters guy, they do their training together, and then they all go out and give it to their subordinates. And then all those guys go out and give it to their subordinates.
yeah.
Nobody knows the material. It's absurd. But that's the way they've been doing it for a very long time. And so when we did the head shed one, we had all the section heads and the CO and myself and the chief, or sorry, the what do you call it, chief of staff, and all these guys. So the most highly educated, most experienced, most mature group of people in the unit. And it took them, only a handful of minutes before the whole thing descended into a struggle session. And
Wow.
what it was one of the guys there, a great guy, great officer, I'd known him for a number of years, and I'd worked on him with some other stuff, and just a gem of a man. And he was sitting there, and he was saying, I feel like I'm doing something wrong, but I don't know what it is. Could somebody please explain to me what I'm doing wrong? Like, I feel like I'm treating people badly or something, but I try not to. And he's being sincere. He's just like a really sweet guy. Um, and uh, and then in the immediate response is like, oh, well, we all seem to understand, and you don't understand. Like, well, what kind of a question is that? Why are you questioning this?
Mm.
And he was like, well, you're saying that I can't really talk about culture because it's racist, but I go to this multicultural church here in Ottawa, and we have Christians from all over the world who have a different take on their Christianity because of their cultural background. So we like to talk about, our differences, our different takes based on our cultural background. And, it just went on from there. It just continued to descend to the point where this guy was totally beaten down and
Uh,
totally like
uh,
demoralized, until I
so,
finally broke in and I was like, well, I didn't hear him say that at all. Like, they were saying he was a racist. They were accusing him of diminishing the scores of his of different ethnicity subordinates.
wow.
Yeah, they really did. They actually did that. And I was like galled. So I was like, I didn't hear him say that at all. And they were like, oh no, what did you hear him say, Jeff? And I said, I heard him say that he performed a gender-based analysis plus on his subordinate and determined that his strong leadership style was the result of an intersection between his cultural background and his military background. And he was like, yes, thank you, Jeff. And I was like, yeah, guys, you just gave us the GBA plus training like last year, and now this year you've completely flipped it on its head. Like, give me a break.
Yeah,
So
it sounds like the same time frame where I kind of got my ire up because it was in around 2016, 2017 when all of a sudden the government came out and they formulated this motion M103 that declared that all Canada was systemically racist and Canadians were religious discriminators. Well, right off the top, all of you, and I thought right there, I thought this is codswallop. This is just absolute bull crap. And I started writing. I started, diving into what the hell they were talking about and writing about it. And it's all just a fraud. It's just a fraud to take down, as far as I can see, it's a fraud to take down Western society and everything that kind of
yes,
makes Western society great. Individualism, self-determination. Um,
yes.
okay.
Everything that made us great in the first place is under attack. All of
Yeah.
the principles that made us the greatest civilization in the history of the world are under attack because
Yeah.
our enemies understand that you don't have to bomb us in order to destroy us. You can just tear out the foundations, which are all the most principled, productive
Wow.
people in our society, and you
Wow.
just vilify them with this Marxist psyop that pits the
Yeah.
have-nots against the haves, as if the highest IQ'd people stole their smarts and attractiveness from all the dumb uglies. But that's
Yeah.
not what really happens in the world. I mean, it's not fair, but we get dealt a different hand in life. What matters really is that you play a good hand. We all understand that everybody's dealt a different hand, but
Yeah. Yeah.
Marxists will just say, no, they stole your cards and put them in your hand. It really appeals, I think, to the human proclivity for the most deadliest sin of all, which is envy.
Yeah.
And we
Envy.
can,
Yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah.
that's how you destroy a society from within.
Well, I got to say so many good points there. Now, Jeff, last question. Uh, what's next for you? Am I going to see you on Tucker Carlson? Are you going to be giving a presentation at the United Nations? What's next for you?
I will take it as far as I can go. I haven't heard from Tucker Carlson or Joe Rogan or any of those guys yet, but keep sharing my videos, please. I would love to get that kind of international attention because
Yes.
I want that judge to feel scrutinized when he's rendering a decision in my case here.
Yeah.
We've seen too much bad precedent set already, so I want to make sure that we have plenty of public awareness before we go in the courtroom.
Okay, I'll let you go now, Jeff. What a pleasure talking to you. And I think first thing I'm going to do once we shut down operations here is I'm going to write Joe Rogan. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Russ. It was a real pleasure. Have a great day.
Okay, talk later. Bye.